to increase the number of kidneys, and in the future, and I understand there's a plan to set up liver transplant and pancreas transplant and other organ transplant in this country. Right now, apart from kidneys, we also do corneal transplants. And the only transplants we're doing right now is living-related donor transplantation. We don't do deceased. And the objective really of this talk is how do we transit to the deceased program? And we'll see. So organ transplantation and local tissue donation systems represent considerable economic savings. There's a lot of data showing that in the long run, if you transplant a patient, the cost to the patient ends up being less than continuing them with dialysis continuously. And what has helped us to transit to deceased donation is that the Kenya Health Law of 2017 provided a legal framework requiring regulation of matters related to tissues and human organ transplantation. This was Section 84. And then the formation of the National Blood Transfusion, Tissue and Human Organ Services, which you've heard a lot about today, initiated the process of development of a national policy on human-derived products for donation, transfusion, and transplantation. So we're actually very, very excited because in the past, we've been doing transplants. Even now, I told you we're doing like 120 to 150 transplants in this country per year. However, there's really no legal system that is supporting that. You can argue that there's nothing also preventing us from doing transplants. So we are doing transplants without any regulations, without any oversight. So we are hoping that with this new body that is being formed, we'll be able to coordinate and oversee transplants and follow them up and come out with data showing that it's actually a good thing to do transplants. So if you look at this slide, from 2006, there were only about 300 transplants in the country. And right now, data as of last year, there were 6,200 patients on dialysis in this country. But as I've shown you, in 2006, we were doing just like 8 transplants per year. And then we've steadily increased until in 2019, we did about 160. But because of the COVID, there was a big drop. We only did about 10 transplants during the COVID year, but it's picking up now. And last year we did another 160 transplants. There are several transplant centers in this country. There's Kenyatta, Nairobi Hospital, MP Shah. Khan is on a standstill for a moment because of logistic reasons. In Eldoret, there's Moi Teaching Referral. There's Medihit, there's another private center. And, yeah, I think those are the ones that are really actively transplanted. So clearly we must increase the donor pool. You've seen that if we're doing over 6,000 dialysis and only 160 transplants in a year, clearly that's not enough. So how do we increase the donor pool? So we've got 2 sources, as I told you, living, and now with this new law, deceased. Living, we are very familiar with the strategies of doing living and how to, the issues related to living. And one thing we have to pay attention to is that we must ensure donor safety, otherwise people will refuse to donate. Number 2, we must create registries. Right now, the Kenya Renal Association is attempting to create a registry for people who have been transplanted, but we don't have a registry for people who have donated. And then also awareness in the hospitals among professionals, and also the population at large need to be educated on the importance of donation. A lot of people are scared about donating. Our culture is really not pro-donation, so we need to provide more education. And what we want to focus on this evening's talk is on deceased donation. So when somebody dies, why should their organs just be buried? Clearly, you can say, hey, this guy, what is he talking about? He wants us to start removing organs from dead people? And that's exactly what people are going to say. But do we have a choice? if you look at the number of patients who we transplanted last year and the number of people on dialysis, clearly there's no way we can manage if we don't look for other alternatives. So now, in terms of disease donation, we need to educate people at the professional level, medical people like you, doctors, nurses. We need to educate the hospital administrators, and also we need to talk at the national level, talk to politicians and people in high positions in the government. We need to ensure transparency, otherwise nobody will want to donate, both for living and also for deceased. Transparency, imagine if somebody dies and they are told there are 2 kidneys for them to donate, so they'll be donated to who? To a politician? Clearly, that's wrong. Nobody will want to be a donor if you're being told that your kidneys will. So there needs to be equity. The allocation needs to be done in a fair way. That's what we're trying to say in this slide. And one important thing is with information technology, we'll be able to assign organs to the right people using a scoring system. I was excited that there's a software called Knbts. I was feeling that maybe we should have another one called FIGO-K. FIGO-K will be used to score donors and allocate them to the appropriate recipients. So this is a referral system for organs and tissues. This is from deceased donors. And I'm not the expert to talk on deceased donation. We have Nancy who's here. She's a transplant coordinator at Kenyatta Hospital. Hopefully in the discussion time, we will engage her to give us her experiences. She worked in Spain for, I think, nearly a year, and she was actively involved in getting organ donors. So once a patient dies in a hospital, then you need to inform the organ procurement office and tell them somebody has died. And even now they're talking of early referral. Even before they've died, and you think they've died, then you inform these people. They'll come to the hospital, talk to the family, and explain to them what disease donation is about. Once the patient dies, then necessary specialties will come. They will retrieve the organs, whether it's the heart, the lungs, the kidneys, the intestines, and they will allocate them to units that have a waiting list. So each donor can give about 8 organs, or 8 patients can benefit, because there are 2 lungs, 2 kidneys, there's a pancreas, liver, those are 6, at least 6. I'm sure there's some more that I've forgotten. So the donor hospital will call the organ procurement office. They'll say, we've got a person who's died, or we think is very critical, that we think they'll die. So the organ procurement office comes, they retrieve the organs and tissues, and then there's 2 systems. Either the organ procurement office can allocate to the transplant centers directly, but in a system like Spain, to remove themselves from this responsibility, they've actually appointed another organ exchange office, or an organ sharing office, that now allocates the organs to the different transplant centers. So the allocation must remain governed by both medical and ethical, by main ethical principles. This is medical utility and justice. So when you're giving an organ, you need to think, this patient has waited, let's say there are 2 patients. One has waited for 10 years waiting for an organ, and another one has only waited for 1 year waiting for an organ. But the one who's waited for 1 year is very sick. The one who's waited for 10 years is very stable. Will you give to the one who's waited for 1 year, or will you give it to the one who's waited for 10 years? So there are a lot of ethical issues relating to the allocation, which we need to sit down and decide who will we allocate the organ to? So there are a lot of criteria that we must follow to decide who should benefit from this organ. And I'm glad and really excited that this Kenya National Blood Transfusion and Transplant Services, I think they've shortened it now to just Kenya Blood Transfusion and Transplant Services. I think that's a good idea. I hope they'll be responsible to oversee this process, because if it's not done properly, it's going to fail. People will mistrust it. They'll think that organs are just being given to the richest person, which is wrong. And then it's going to fail. We need to make it in a transparent way so that organs are not sold, people are not buying organs and then getting transplanted. So in 2010, the WHO adopted a resolution. This was a new version of the guiding principles on human cell tissue and organ transplantation, which stated allocation of organs, cells, and tissues should be guided by clinical criteria and ethical norms, not financial and other considerations. Allocation rules defined by appropriately constituted committees should be equitable, externally justified, and transparent. So this is exactly what I was saying. Now, the elements that are taken into consideration when offering an organ is you need to look at the quality of the organ, you need to do a risk assessment, look at logistics, make our patients benefit from transplantation. Again, experience is required in retrieval of the organs of a deceased individual. It's not as easy as this person has died, I'm just going to cut open and remove the organs. Because if you do it badly, the quality of the organs become very poor, and you just throw them away after that. It needs to be done by experienced people. How do we transport the organ from the donor site to the transplant site? Let's say somebody dies in Garissa. How do you bring the organ to Nairobi? Clearly you need a helicopter. Do we have those logistics in place? Do we have the finances in place to do such things? So I know it's something that it's like a dream, but I believe that if we work hard, we can achieve it. The other issues is cost of maintaining the donor on life support. So let's say you're in an ICU, the patient has died, and we're still looking for the donor. The patient is on ventilatory support. When you do the brainstem reflexes, they're absent, the pupils are fixed and dilated, but there's still a pulse and there's still a BP because the patient is on inotropic support. You need time to get your donor. If you stop this support, then there'll be no pulse, the body will be cold, and the organs will get destroyed. So you need to maintain this patient on life support as you're organizing yourself. Who will pay for this? You see, when the relatives agree with their patient, they know this patient is dead, but we're just doing it because we want to donate these organs to Mr. XY. Who's Mr. XY? Why should we go through all this when we could have finished and buried our relative by now? So you can see, it's not, and then immunological workup. Clearly you need to give that organ to somebody who matches. You're not just going to call anybody and say, oh, there's an organ at Nairobi Hospital, can you come? You need to have, they need to have a registry, and in that registry you need to know what their tissue types are, so that when you're calling them, you're calling the best recipient who can benefit from this donation. So clearly we need to set up a laboratory that can do this. So what are the solutions? One, we need to educate both professionals and the community. Two, we need to have more training in organ retrieval. We used to call it organ harvesting, but clearly harvesting sounded like such a crude terminology that we've changed that word to organ retrieval. We need clearly to train, practice and drills to see, for example, how will we transport the organ from point A to point B in good time. And we clearly need support from the central government, and that's why I'm really, really excited that this new body has been formed I'm just hoping that the blood people don't swallow the transplant people, because you can see even in this conference, there's so much about blood, but there's very little about transplant. And I've been very excited to be given this opportunity to talk to you about transplantation. And finally, and I'm excited about this immunology lab, because I understand Kenyatta Hospital has actually started an immunology lab, which will really help in determining tissue typing, cross-matching, and which is the best person to benefit from this whole. So with those few words, I want to end my presentation there. And I think the questions will come maybe at the end of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Another round of applause. That was interesting, isn't it? I know there's a lot of reaction on disease donation, a lot of questions. I know some of us are learning now, we've heard about it, but now you have opportunity actually to be able to ask questions. This is the expert who is sitting here, so you have this opportunity. So thank you very much, Dr. once again. I think I need to invite the next presenter, Mr. Rocky Chupili, who is going to take us through coordinating efficient blood transfusion service at county level. So at least let us know what is happening in the county. At least now we know what is happening in both public and private sector in terms of transplant. We also know what really happens at the county level. So, Rocky karibu, nakupea dakika 10. So the members who have also just walked in, you are welcome to this. I think this hall is almost full, and we are very, very glad that you actually want to participate in this. Let us have a healthy discussion. So kindly just take a pen and a paper, note down your question. We are going to have a plenary session which may take close to 30 minutes or 20 minutes. So thank you. Karibu.
Thank you so much. I think I'm audible enough. Good evening. Good evening. Okay, colleagues.
No, let us just give the mic.
I think I'm audible enough.
We are sanitizing for you. We are sanitizing for you.
No problem.
Is he audible?
No. I'm not audible.
So you see the Johari window,
Okay. So I'm going to give you a story it's actually an untold story of a blood transfusion monster that kills many people in Kenya, and the Kenyans themselves are not able to donate blood for themselves for use. One day in 2018, during the harvest season, a pregnant mother of gestation period 28 weeks went to a health facility seeking urgent medical attention. When reaching there, the doctor examined and found that she had an HB of 4, 30 millimoles per liter blood sugar, she had PPH, and she had a wound, that is diabetic wound. So the doctor thought that the only thing is blood transfusion for units and amputation. There was no blood in the lab. So what he did, the lab called the Regional Blood Transfusion Center, and then called it the satellite. The satellite said that they have no any unit of blood. Instead, they are waiting for results from the Regional Blood Transfusion Center so that they can give the results. And they have got 3 days batching their samples to check for screening. But however, by 3, results will be available. So the doctor decided to manage the mother. So at exactly 3, a call from the lab saying that results are there, blood is there. So compatibility testing started, took some samples for compatibility. As the process of compatibility testing was done, in fact, before that, the doctor decided to take some donors, the relative donors, because now that was the only option. So 8 donors came, on donor suitability. 4 of them had anemia, their HB was low. 2 had diabetic, and 2 were underage. So the lady could not be helped. So as he was managing, a call came saying that the blood was there, compatibility was, testing was done. But before it was completed, the lady died. So now, this scenario asks questions: when, how, what? Are we going to have a transformed health system that we are going to have a good health outcome? How many of us here today are experiencing the same scenario in our health facility? So because of that, Kenyans are so good. They voted for a new constitution in 2010. This was an asset. This 2010 constitution had 2 levels of government, the national and the county. There was mandate, functions, and the roles, and therefore blood transfusion was not devolved, but it was coordinated from the national. As a result, because we have the best president with the UHC, and within the president, the cabinet secretaries who are very devoted. I remember them saying, for how long are we going to continue having this same scenario, losing lives? And if we are going to treat this thing normally, it is going to treat us abnormally. Therefore, he signed the UHC, and after that, it brought the issue of intergovernmental framework, which was spearheaded by Dr. Ndugu Kilonzo. And for that case, donors are available in both national and county. Prescription of blood is both national and county, and therefore blood transfusion became a shared function. And for that case, because counties, they are the most users of blood, they were left with collection, they were left with storage, storage, distribution, also monitoring and evaluation, health information system because they have to report, and research. The blood in the counties is used in solving issues of anemia, RTA, obstetric emergency, cancer, and others. So, if that lady could have been in a situation where there is good coordination of blood transfusion services, could she have lost life? That is a question to ask. So, and because counties were the ones to do collections, then under the leadership of the president of the counties, who are the governors, they take the lead. And that's why you see my governor, Dr. Mstahiki Mvurya, donating blood, taking the lead in blood transfusion services. Then it is the counties that are supposed to ensure there is adequate, safe blood for transfusion. Then it is the responsibility of the counties to ensure that they have pool of regular, non-remunerated donors. And in the counties, this is how it happens. our blood is drawn from static, that is my chief officer in the satellite, and also in mobile, in schools and in many others, Manyatas, Tangatangari, everywhere looking for blood. At the same time, we have blood donors who are first timers, we have repeat, and we have the regular donors. One experience that we have realized is the first timers are so many, and they are mostly in mobile. They are hit and runners. Hit and run. The repeat are more in static, so we took it as an advantage, and the regulars were in the mobile. So what was our task was to transform the first timers to become repeat and then graduate into regular blood donors. And also because first timers are mainly in the mobile, then the task is consistency in following these donors in blood donation is key. Because if you go after 6 months, he will be no longer a regular donor. Maybe you will even miss him. So, as we are doing this, at the same time, you continue applying the socio-ecological model to make sure that the donors changes from first-timers to regular donors. So there are things that we did to ensure that we have the regular blood donors. So apart from transforming them, the other thing that we did was donor groups. We formed donor groups, and as we are talking, we are having regular donors who meet, who prepare sessions in churches, and on Sundays, my people usually go for donations. And also, we try to remove fees for blood transfusion in private facilities, because this will motivate donors to give out blood. Also, school clubs. In schools, because most of our blood is coming from schools, then we were forced also to have regular clubs, integrate blood transfusion in their clubs, debate and others, and also come up with monetary strategies. For example, providing health talks on ABO blood grouping. That is a topic in biology form 2, and therefore we were building from what the teacher is doing. Then we go and say, tutafundisha kidogo hiyo topic, alafu tutafanya demonstration so that the student can know, oh, blood group A inakuwa hivi. So in so doing, it is not a matter of going to school and taking blood, but also our presence has to be felt, so that we are also part and parcel of the system. And we are also contributing in solving the issue of negative attitudes towards mathematics and sciences. The issue of media is very critical. We are also involved in media. The issue of supply chain, very important. And more so, what we are want to do is the donor registration and the post-donor management, because these are donors, therefore we need to maintain them. So that lady, if there could be good system, she could not have had death. So, because also we have to get a lot of blood so that it is accessible to whoever needs. So what is this? This is actually access. Countries have to ensure that there is blood. and availability of safe blood products and the services within reasonable reach of those who need them. So the question here is, how do we ensure that our fridges and freezers in the blood collection units and the satellites are flooded with blood? That is a task. And for that case, then you need to do some scanning of the LWP annual work plan and see what are the diseases causing morbidities and mortalities. So that from there now you can plan and see your population. If it is 800,000, then you are sure you have 8,000 units of blood. So among the things that we did are increasing the blood collection units, improving time of taking samples, preparing products, supply chain, quantification as per disease, and also doing some reporting and rational use. And rational use of blood was very, very key. Safety. You also need to ensure there is blood that you are transfusing safety, and in safety, this is stipulated in most of the documents, like the Constitution, the blood transfusion standards that says you have to ensure the safety from collection, testing, processing, storage, and distribution. And from collection, you ensure that you are collecting from low-risk donors.
Wind up, Jockey. I'm very generous. I've added 4 minutes.
Okay. Then quality. Quality is another issue that is very, very important. Something that is effective, safe, timely. So here it is customer need. You prepare the blood products as per the clinical need. So here is actually clinical need because there are two beneficiaries, the clinician and the patient. So whatever the clinician requests as per the patient need, you are the one to provide. And when you do calculation, the issues and the requests, if you are above 80%, then you have satisfied your customers. At the same time, you need to know who are the blood users of that facilities. So you have to see the transfusing facilities, female ward, maternity, you can see they were the most users, and also check the clinical indications for transfusion for those facilities, because it will guide you in planning. So you can see anemia was taking the lead and others. So health system, the same. This is ensuring that systems are in place, so ensuring everything is in order. M&E, from M&E, monitoring and evaluation. Ensuring that blood transfusion is in the budget is also very key. Also, doing the quantification per condition was very, very important because you are able to see which are the departments are using a lot of blood. Advocacy per program and the departments, review meetings and the trainings. The Kenya standards requires each facilities to have continuous quality improvement that facility will be doing as an improvement project, and therefore institutionalization of quality management system is key. Those are the way forward: quantification based on disease and condition, donor management because of the issues of anemia, develop specific health messages. Yeah, our counties, the blood donation, the category of age 30 and above are not donating, so we want to develop a specific health message on that, lobby for human resource. And this is an overwhelmed health system. You can see it is the vehicle. We have the department malaria and the others. So blood transfusion does not exist alone. When you're planning, plan also include blood transfusion. If you are from the malarial world, when you go for an outreach, distributing it, somebody is donating blood, give him the net so that tomorrow is not disqualified because of malaria. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Let us give him another round of applause. Thank you very much. As I said earlier on, we are going just to be writing down questions for him. I know he has talked a lot about health system strengthening. What about quality? So even lab, you being a lab person, you provide quality blood. What are the challenges? Those are things now that we need to have as a discussion during plenary session. Kindly just put down your notes so that we have it. Now, at this juncture, I want to invite Dr. Godwin Mugo from CHAC. CHAC is Christian Health Association of Kenya. He's going to take us to role and lesson learned of FBOs, faith-based organization, hospitals and transfusion and transplant. So, karibu sana daktari. I'm going to give you 10 minutes. I know I was very generous with the two presenters, so I don't know whether I'm going to strangle you, or maybe I know maybe you can finish in 5 minutes. So, karibu sana, the floor is yours.
Make it brief as much as possible. Yes, so I present CHAC. CHAC is a network of faith-based hospitals, Protestant ones. Basically, a network of around 400 dispensaries, health centers, and facilities around the country. We at least have presence in 42 or 47 counties in Kenya. Basically, when we think about blood, is that we know that we cannot talk about a good and working health system without access to blood and blood components that are safe and are easy to access for our population. And as you saw, is that about every 10 minutes, about 7 people are going to require transfusion in our country. And that gives us a need of around 500,000 units per year. And when we look at what happened in the previous year, that's 2021, we were able to do around 59% of what we need. And that affects us not only as the faith-based, but also basically as a health system as a general. And this creates a lot of mobility and mortality that we have to think about as we go forward if we are going to be able to deliver services that are responsive to the needs of our population. In the faith-based sector, you find that we have like a coordinating body that is the Kenya Faith-Based Health Services Consortium that brings together the various faith bodies. Because CHAC looks at Protestant, but you have KCCB and others, basically SUPKEM and the like. So they come together to form this body, basically that contributes the activities. And basically this graph tries to look at what we are talking about. You can see a dip. This point is it up? Oh, sorry.
It doesn't show.
It doesn't show, eh? Oh yeah, now I'm wondering, I can see something. Yeah. So basically it tries to show a dip that has happened as a result of COVID. What happened at that time? And when they put in mechanisms, basically by the end of 2021, we are able to get around 287,000 units for that year, which is a very good thing. And that tells you, you put in the right mechanisms, we are actually going to be able to meet the need for blood and plant products and other, emerging needs that we're having that are growing now for transplant and all that. For faith-based, so some of the unique challenges that we see within the faith-based system is that one, we are supplying through the hub and spoke model where we find that we have the regional centers, maybe satellite blood banks, and that's where we draw our blood products from. And we find that actually it's never really enough. We never have enough for what we consider our day-to-day use. We've had the effect of COVID in our settings affecting us in a big way. Because there's a still safe at home messaging where we're telling people to minimize movement and all that. Yet those are the very same people that we need actually to screen, the same people we need them to donate and all that. Very stringent donor selection criteria because now you have to do a little, ensuring safety for these particular patients. Many drives that we had and camps like that were cancelled as a result of that. The cessation of movement, disruption of movement means that somebody may be willing to donate, somebody will be willing to participate in what you're doing, but because they can't move from one county maybe to another, one region to another, so you're not able to access that particular donor. Then a lot of elective procedures and all that have to be postponed because you're going to be able to meet the demand for what you already had as emergency requirements. Another big problem is actually the turnaround times that you have in being able to avail safe blood. And oftentimes, like now, even after, let's say, a drive has been done, and they have to take the various units that are donated to the regional lab for screening and all that, and then back to the facilities so that they're able to utilize. You find out currently there's quite an improvement. Actually, now it's around 4 days, but the times it used to be much longer than that. And we can agree that 4 days is still not good enough for what you want to do. Just like we heard about these patients, somebody who needs blood now, you cannot tell them to wait for 4 days. They'll be dead before you're able to make an intervention for them. And that's a common thing and a problem we see all over. Then the other thing is that we rely really on family replacement donors to be able to get most of the blood that we have. Though there are still some elements of the drives where we're able to go out into outreaches and the like, but that is still not enough. Majority of this comes in as replacement, and that is not really a sufficient pool of what we want to be able to do. Retention of donors. You know, find somebody who will come donate once and that is it. Only when maybe they have a sick patient, somebody is dying, so they are, for them it's like almost mandatory. I have to leave because my patient needs blood, and once that is done, that is over, the person will never come again. So we need to think, what do we do for these particular people? Then, a good number of our FPUs are in places where they handle a lot of emergencies, accidents, and the like, you know, the way they are distributed. And so you find that the demand for blood is actually quite high. And also quite a number of complex surgeries being done in a number of these facilities. So blood actually is a necessity, not something we can overemphasize the need for this particular population. And as we think about that, beyond the challenges which are there, what are some of the opportunities we say really are there that we pose or we present as a faith-based constituency that we can actually utilize and maximize that to be able to improve access to safe blood and products? So one of them is that basically in almost every corner of this country you're going to find a faith-based facility somewhere. And so that vast reach means that we can be able to use actually that network to create a very good mobilization channel to be able to reach virtually every community that we have within this nation. The other thing is about when we think about matters faith, we find that they form a very integral part of the community. The hospitals are part of the community. There's a very strong ownership by the communities. When you look at most of them, they are affiliated to either a church or a mosque or something like that. And that means that already there are existing relationships with the community. And these people have some level of trust. Some level, you know, religious leaders want some level of trust, sacred trust, let me say it that way. That actually, many times when they are able to message, when we're able to use them as a channel, we can be able to leverage that religious and traditional social capital to be able to create a mobilization awareness across the entire population so that we can actually get people coming out to donate blood. And then we have a health infrastructure across the country that we can say supportive of safe transfusion. We have good labs and all that can be able to be utilized. You can even consider maybe some of those as satellites and all that, depending on where they are positioned. So the infrastructure is there to be able to support the process. With the expansion of specialization in places like Knbts and the like, that means also as we go into other specialized services, transplant and the like, then we have opportunity also to create a network among these facilities that can be able to improve access for our general population. And then, of course, the fact that many of them are providing very comprehensive services under NHIF, so no charging and all that we just had in the plenary right now. So that means access is quite good for a majority of our population. So what do we do as we think about that? Number one is we need to create those partnerships. We need to make sure they are working. Because as I mentioned, there's that huge catchment. There's those trusted relationships that you can actually be able to utilize. And through those partnerships, you can use them to create a public awareness. And we've seen that, I think there are quite a number of studies that show that if you're able to create social awareness and you're able to appeal to the altruistic reasons, and that's where faith comes in, altruism, you know, that I'm actually saving a life, I'm making a difference in somebody's life. You are able to appeal to that element in people's lives. Many people will be willing to step up and to actually become a donor to one another. And also when we talk about stuff like transplant and all that, retrieval of organs and all that, faith definitely will be a challenge in quite a number of ways. And if you're able to engage these constituents, already we have broken a very big barrier in terms of improving availability and access to these organs. Then we need to think about, you know, of course, more use of various media platforms and all that to be able to create the awareness that is there. Social media, we know about the influencers and all that. And we know especially in the young population how strong those people can be. When they're able actually to step up and be able to be on the forefront, they can become a very good channel for mobilization. Then of course, they're considering some of the FBO hubs in some of those remote places, actually whether we can be able to create some of them as satellite points for blood collection and processing and all that, build that infrastructure for them, supply reagents so that they're able to do that work. And then the pooling of resources among players, because like what we've seen in other systems, let's say like the HIV and TB field. So you find, for instance, there are many hospitals or clinics and dispensaries and all that in Kwale and all that. And you find they are using actually one vehicle by one donor to deliver all their viral loads or their sputums to a particular hub that is in that, and that is serving that particular region or that particular county. So why don't we do the same for blood transfusion and other products? That we can bring on all the different players, faith-based, government, whoever, and ensure they are actually pulling together the few resources which are there to do the drive donations and all that, ensure distribution of commodities and the like. I think we've already talked about the BMIS, the DAMUK. We have also others who are having like these are social ones, DAMUSASA. They are also doing their own thing to try to mobilize and the like, and that helps to be able to improve the data capture for us, so that we're able also to map and know where do you get your product when you need it. You know, recently I personally had my own challenge trying to look for O-negative blood for somebody, and I know, I can imagine, it's me. I'm somebody who is in the system. I understand the system a little bit. I have a few contacts I can call, because I personally called like 17 different hospitals that day. I called the regional blood bank. I called the national blood bank. And at that moment, even when I called the national blood bank, they were telling me, okay, we have samples, we are preparing them. Can we talk to you at 4 in the afternoon? That time, this is a woman, this is a girl. She's 21 years old, my own niece, with APH at 32 weeks gestation. There's no blood in her. Well, finally I got one, but I had to transport it many hundreds of kilometers for her to be able to get it in the evening of that day. I'm imagining if it was somebody who didn't know the system, what would have happened? Most likely that patient would have died. So this BMIS is going to solve that for us. Because you just get behind your screen and you can see where actually can I be able to get this without having even to make 1,000 phone calls. And then of course having that repository for real blood groups and the like, so that we're able to create a continuous donation from those people and be able to maintain enough supply. Then the quality management system that somebody has mentioned. So now we're improving availability and all that. How do we ensure that actually quality is maintained? And I think when we come to that last point, it really becomes useful what we are just doing in the plenary this morning, launching various standards and guidelines and all that, because we need some level of uniformity in how we communicate the nomenclature, the things, what are the standards, how are we going to use various products and all that, so that it's uniform across board, and that way that becomes actually a very important part of the QMS for blood transfusion. So that's it in a nutshell. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. This is appreciated. Another round of applause. Are we okay? Let us just stand straight as the panelists are coming in front here. Let us give them a round of applause, all of them. You can pull your chair. Sit here, somebody else here, so that you're centrally placed. So we stretch, 1, 2, 3. You prepare for the plenary, isn't it? So you twist like this, and then like this. So you've been sitting since morning. But I tell you what, it's not healthy to sit from morning to evening. So we have to stretch. So thank you very much. Sit down. Now we are going to have a quick plenary. I might be looking around. You can assist me in that. Kindly just raise up your hand. We are going to take the first 5 questions. We'll have the first 5 questions. They will respond kindly as we are addressing your question, just address to who. If it is Dr. Twahir, say, I know for those of you who came in late, we have Dr. Twahir here, we have Joki here, and we have Dr. Mungo there. So you can actually address the question directly to them. Or if you can't remember their names, you can address the session. You can say the last presenter or the first presenter. So there we are. Let us pick the first 5 questions. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, this question, my name is Kenneth Masharia. I'm the country representative for Options. Options is a global consultancy that works in the health space. And in Kenya, we know 30 counties. Question for you, Dr. Twahir. So in terms of just the system that you're presenting there, how are you going to address the issues to do with making organs a commodity? In that case, obviously there are risks around.
Your mask when you speak. The sound is being muffled.
It's a bit muffled.
Yeah.
So first question I was really asking about what you presented. How are you going to overcome the issue of making organs into a commodity and in a sense creating a black market for that? Because what you were trying to present there obviously is very good, and as we know, if the value of something goes up, obviously the need for it also goes up, and people start creating a black market for that. So I just wanted to ask whether you consider that as a particular issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another question. Mike, kindly the lady who was roaming with the mic, just be first, just sanitize and then give to the next.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Emma. I come from Kisumu County and that's in the Medical Services. My question is to Rocky. I don't know if you have similar prevalence for HIV like we do have in Kisumu, because ours is 17%. So it makes us want to be very strategic in ensuring that when we are going out for a donor drive, then we have to ensure that we don't have a lot of blood that is going to waste. So in your county, how are you able to convert the first-timers to regular donors and also to maintain a register of people who are regular donors so that you are able to stabilize the supply chain for blood? Thank you.
My name is Professor Manje from Biga. I'm not in the field of medicine, so I'm very confused. You harvest when the person is still alive, is trying to die, or he dies first, then you harvest the organ. Because I'm seeing here a situation where you could harvest when you're not very sure this person is going to die. Very disturbing for a layman like myself. Now, number 2 is a question to Mabi. Yes. The question is, the system you described, have you documented it? Have you documented all those steps that you have to go through so that other counties can look at them? And finally, Moko, Dr. Moko, you talked of resource pooling in your recommendation. At what level? Is it at the facility level? Is it at the county level? Is it at the national level, or is it across the 3? Thank you.
My name is Catherine Bosire from Kingsman Consultancy. The address is to Dr. Moko. I wanted to just get a clarification. What are the challenges you face with Knbts as far as blood collection is concerned? Because there seems to be an indication that there are some facilities that are able to, like in the model of Hemophilia, that you can go to the field and collect blood, and there are some facilities that don't seem to be permitted to do that. So what's the criteria? Who is able to do it? Is it limited only to government facilities to go out and collect blood? Or have you been able to overcome that barrier? And what are the mandates of who in the faith-based facilities can actually go out as a healthcare facility to collect blood and who cannot? And how are you getting that done?
My name is Winnie Jerry, country manager Zipline. We do delivery of medical products like roads. Question to Rocky. How do you mitigate wastage, which comes vis-a-vis use of whole blood, vis-a-vis use of components, blood components, and body? When people are not sure they're going to get the night stop, they tend to overload. How do you mitigate that wastage?
Thank you very much. I think those are 5 questions. We can just pick the first 5 questions. We can start with you, Dr. Twahir.
Thank you for those 2 questions. The first one was, how do we prevent organs being a commodity because they're very rare? They're likely to go into the black market. If you look at the Kenyan law 2017, it stipulates that anybody engaged in trading of organs is subject to a fine of 10 billion, 10 years imprisonment, or both. That's number 1. Number 2, there are international laws and regulations from international bodies like the Declaration of Istanbul, the WHO, that clearly governs the issue of organ donation and transplantation, and discusses and discourages organ trafficking and transplant tourism. So your question is very valid, because this has actually happened in the past, where in India, people used to go and they used to get transplanted, and the donors used to be street boys, where they would be given $100 and the middleman would end up with $10,000 or more. So realizing this, several international bodies came up to condemn this activity. We have our lawyer here who represents the Kenya Renal Association. This time she might be able to comment regarding your issue. The other issue is when we are, the word harvesting, I told you, sounds very crude. So let's use a better word like retrieval. So retrieval, when do we decide a patient has died and now we can retrieve their organs? We are not going to retrieve organs from somebody who's alive, but we can alert the organ procurement office that we have a very sick patient in hospital X who is likely not going to survive. So can you please come and start the process of explaining to them about deceased donation. Now, this patient might survive, and obviously you're not going to remove the kidneys or any other organs. Now, your question is very important, because what is death? How do you know somebody has died? Now, there's 2 definitions that many hospitals and medical people go by. One is the definition of brain death, where all your brainstem reflexes are absent, your pupils are fixed and dilated, there's no corneal reflex, there's no gut reflex, there's no response to painful stimuli. And then there's the circulatory death as a definition, where there's no pulses and the body is cold. So clearly, when that happens, you are not going to use this patient as a donor. However, you have time. In kidneys, up to 1 hour is allowed when the pulse has stopped. Liver, up to half an hour. The other organs will be useless to be used. So there's very little of donation by circulatory death definition being used as organ donors. In fact, less than 10% of the world is doing that, because you can see it's very complex, and you really need a lot of time. You need to be very quick, rather, to retrieve your organs so that they don't start decomposing. But the definition of death by brain death, where the heart is still beating, where there's still a pulse, there's still a blood pressure which is being maintained by inotropic drugs, but the pupils are fixed, they are dilated, there's no brainstem reflexes. Now again, we have here a transplant coordinator who worked in Spain, who was involved in organ retrieval from deceased donors. I'd like her also to comment if the chair will allow.
Thank you very much, Daktari. Maybe we'll allow her to give an input, but do we do it now?
Yes.
Okay. Who is she or who is he?
Nancy is...
Okay. Nancy. Just 1 minute. Good evening. Thank you for this chance. About the most probable one that we'll start by using is the one that Dr. Padilla is explaining, the deceased after brain death. Because you have time, you start watching the patient when the Glasgow Coma scale gets from 7 up to when to get 3. When the Glasgow Coma scale gets to 3. And there are different routes of ascertaining that for sure those patients are brain dead. And the systems that we need to come up with as Knbts is like how many people we need to ascertain that this patient is dead. Most hospitals have an intensivist, a neurological surgeon, and any physician. Number 2, which methods do we use? Most hospitals like using like 2 instruments, like they can talk about a CT angiogram, a Doppler, reflexes. You cannot just wake up one day, look at the patient like this. So there are stipulated ways of ascertaining that the patient for real is dead. Number 3, the organs, they have different half-lives. Like the heart, most of these transplants are from a theater to a theater. You can't store them. Like for heart, you have to harvest the heart and use it within 4 hours. So that these people have this mentality of like they'll be stored somewhere, then they can be distributed to the next hospital, like that. So organs is from theater to theater, and they have different waiting times. Like the way I was saying, for heart is 4 hours, for liver is like 6 hours, but kidney is the longest, 12 hours. About it being a national resource, they will have jurisdictions that will be following. Like all the kidneys to be harvested here because they belong to Kenya. They can only be used to Kenyans only unless there is no Kenyans who need. And I don't think there will be a chance like that. However, we can also use other regional methods. Like we can say East African, we can start sharing with East Africa. Like in Europe, they share in the European Union. So all those stipulations, all those SOPs is what now we need to start those conversations. What is our SOP on brain death? What is our sharing criteria? What is our ages that we are going to take? Yeah, I'm hoping now.
So far we have no regulations.
What we don't have is operationalization. The law can allow, but now we need to sit down and now decide how will we define our brain death? By 2 instruments, by signs and symptoms, by how many doctors, 3 or 2? That's what now we need to start today so that we can be able to do next week. Those things need to be in place.
So you're right, we don't have regulation. We're hoping that this Kenya National Blood Transfusion and Transplant Services will come up, create regulation and maybe an oversight to make sure that people are following those regulations properly.
Thank you very much.
Very, very interesting. I know people are saying we need this yesterday, we needed this yesterday, but you have it today. So it's a discussion, it's still ongoing. So Joe, you have questions. Kindly respond. Sorry.
Thank you so much. First, I think I'll start answering my sister from the lake, and me, I'm from the sea. Probably we are sharing some similarities. The denominator is water. First and foremost, we are very keen on ensuring blood is donated from low-risk donors. Therefore, we don't go to that where. The only safe is the schools. And very soon, we are going the community way. I have already developed M&E framework for blood transfusion in the county and transfusion from the community. So we are going to the community model. So for that case, number 2, in the starting points, we ensure that these first timers are counseled, are transformed through counseling, and they are told, today you are donating because of this patient, but actually we need you next 3 months to come and donate. So we are trying to build a culture using also the socio-ecological model where information is passed from person to institution, and also putting values onto the donors. Like for example, going to churches or mosques and relate blood donation with godly scriptures. So that one has worked. And then number 3 is issues of notification of blood donors. We encourage donors to come and get their results. Are you okay, from the leg? Then there is another one. The issue of documentation. Documentation, we have done one documentation, it has been published. We have actually reduced maternal perinatal death in the county using those strategies. As I said earlier, we have developed M&E for maternal, only dealing with the maternal death, and we have reviews. Then the other one was minimize wastage. Number 1, we have encouraged facilities to come up with their minimum and maximum requirements of blood and blood products. So from there, we are able to track their usage. So in so doing, we have minimized wastage. And at the same time, we have come up with our subgroup with all the facilities. So, number 1, every day, they give me status of blood from their facilities. At the same time, I also inform my CC the status of blood every day. Friday, they tell me the status, the same answer, how much they have to cover for weekend. If there is any deficiency, then measures can be done. They said I give feedback to the CHMT so that this one is to make sure that blood transfusion is a collective responsibility. And we are very keen on product preparation so that we also minimize wastage. And also, we do redistribution. When we supply blood, we also do distribution and monitor expires. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rocky. Now we have
questions. One was about resource pooling. So this is something that is supposed to happen at every level, right from the facilities, because, for instance, let's say we are here in Kiambu, right? And we want to do, for instance, and drive somewhere in the neighborhood. Here we have 3-4 health facilities in that area. I might be the only one with a facility as a vehicle. Those guys may be willing to participate and be able to help in the drive and all that. So why should I just go do this thing and leave the rest out when we can actually be able to pull that simple resource of just something as simple as a vehicle to actually ensure that everybody participates and are able to reach as many people as possible. So it has to begin at that level. Even then coming to the counties and all that, because many of them you find they are funded or supplied from a particular regional lab, a transfusion center, so they can come together to be able to see how they're going to resource it and how they're going to ensure that the blood is available, they're mobilizing for it, and to ensure that the supplies required are available in good quantity. So if it's only one person is doing it, then you definitely limit what you can be able to do. We know that 1+1 in synergy is equals to 3. So that's what we need to do. And then about collection, asking what could be the constraint at once, faith-based and all that. Not really a constraint, but the fact is that in a majority of the places where you find, for instance, going out to people to do donation drives and all that, that only happens in the level 4 and 5 where maybe transfusions and operations are taking place, so the big hospitals and all that. And we are missing out on a very big population that is actually being served by the health centers and dispensaries and all that in many of those other places. And also to bring in churches that actually support and sponsor those particular facilities. You realize most of these organized mainstream churches, every of them has like a health week every year. Why can't we, for instance, from the blood transfusion service, decide to engage them at this level and say, next year we want their health week to be about blood transfusion? And we have that running countrywide. If it's, let's say, Anglican church, and they're having, you can imagine that message goes around the country in the Anglican church 1 week. And then the other week we have a Catholic one, and the other week an SD, and the other week something else. We will actually be able to meet the demand without even a struggle. And because the number of people who we are reaching through those networks are going to be many. So it's about the missed opportunity that we have that we actually need to capitalize. Not that there is really a bottleneck, but it's that there is opportunity which is unutilized that we need to go on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. That was well done. We are at 6:41 p.m. Do you want us to continue? Okay, do we have a very burning question?
Just a comment.
Just a comment, okay.
Are you audible? Yes, I'm happy. So, I need to clarify on turnaround time. For quite some time, we have had prolonged turnaround time across counties. But I work for Knbts and I monitor turnaround time. So, for up to, I think last month, is when we had a breakthrough that Lodwa has been the one taking for like 4 days, but from last month onwards we started using air flight, so it's able to have its turnaround time on sample testing of around 12 hours. So for some time, we can say on average as a country, our turnaround time is 25 to 30 hours.
Thank you very much. That's a comment. The panelists want to ask a question to another panelist.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll give you time.
So in the tell just wanted to ask about, especially when you think about transplant and all that. So okay, just a question about stem cell research and what room does it have? Because we know let's say somebody who's having a kidney failure is going through dialysis and all that, we know will need to get a transplant at some time. So is there a role or room for that, for people to be able to actually use that kind of science? Have we been able to, is there any hope really? Because I think that would be something that would save things for us. If you're able to do something where people have to grow their own organs or something like that. So in that direction, where are we globally?
Thank you. There was another? You're done?
Oh, thank you very much.
I hope I've not closed out on anyone. So maybe Dr. Toa, you can just respond to that one as the last question.
A short response is stem cell research in kidney transplant is still a non-starter, and we wait to see what will happen in the future.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maybe now we can just go to quickly the highlight what was picked by the